The Flash 759, Joshua Williamson writing with Rafa Sandoval on the art. This is the start of the finish line, the final arc from Joshua Williamson. And Matt teased, before I read anything, he teased that he liked this issue a lot, which, even though we've been more positive on it recently, it's not been at the level where Matt's like, hey, this is a really good issue. Like, before I read it. It's not had that sort of level of hype to it. So I was very intrigued going into this to see what it was going to be like. And yeah, it's definitely one of the best issues of Flash that have happened in a long time. And part of that is because it finally almost feels like it doesn't, most of the run bizarrely doesn't really matter at this point. It feels like it's more about just the history of Barry and Thawne and the other characters in general. Obviously you have Wallace and Avery and they're fine and they're great being there, but ultimately what they've actually been through, it doesn't seem that relevant, at least in this issue. It may be more relevant as the story goes forward, of course. I mean, I have no idea what elements are going to pull from soon. But if you remember last issue, Thawne went into Barry's body and he is now possessed Barry and he's running around, and all the art at the start I thought was really good because it was Thawne running around as Barry with a big smile on his face saying, I'm going to be a better Flash. I'm going to be the Flash that Barry can never be. He's got this big cheesy grin in his face. He's getting to finally cosplay as the hero that he always wanted to be. And he runs into the Young Justice and says hi to Bart, and Bart runs off with them, and he's all happy, and he's winking at him, and he's being all cheesy. And ultimately, when they end up like running into Captain Cold and Golden Glider, who've decided to rob a bank or whatever, Trickster's there as well, and Thawne basically like injures Trickster by being like too violent. And Bart questions it, and he's like, oh, maybe you're not a proper speedster, maybe you're not good enough for the Flash family, maybe I've made a mistake. And he runs off, and there's this panel of like Bart just like standing there like with darkness around him, and it's like hello darkness my old friend. It really feels like that. And meanwhile Barry is in not the Speed Force per se, but wherever he went when Thawne took over, with sort of a zombie looking Jesse Quick and Max Mercury. And basically they try and talk to him, though it looks like they're attacking him, but they try and talk to him to tell him to not be scared, to specifically that you've already paid enough for Flashpoint, forgive yourself for it. And they turn into more normal looking, Jesse Quick and Max Mercury, because ultimately they were appearing scary to him because of his guilt. Bit of a stretch. I mean, that's just kind of in there, but I'll roll with it. And he's like, oh, I do remember you two. I remember Max Mercury. I remember Jesse Quick, and they're talking about it. And they're saying, hey, you have to try and get back out and take over. They talk, they're kind of catching up a little bit. But it's like you have to, think with the Speed Force, that think at super speed and try and break out, because he actually sees, he sort of like thinks about it. He can see Bart running with himself essentially, with Thawne. And he tries to, there's a couple of moments where he kind of tries to and the art's quite good here, where it kind of phases between Thawne and Barry, where he actually yells out Bart run, meaning get away from Thawne. Obviously he doesn't get that meaning from it, but basically Thawne runs off to where Iris is hiding with Wallace and Avery, and he shows up and he's been all happy and kind of cheesy. And Iris is like, hey, you weren't supposed to come see us for a while. Like, the whole point of this was for you to stay away. And does this mean everything's dealt with? And he's like, oh, I thought I'd come get my youngsters and, go and, like, defeat Thawne as. And I think, part of why Matt probably loves this issue, we've not got to what he said yet, but he's basically in the middle of trying to trick the kids into helping. And then we get this wonderful page of Bart kicking him in the face. He speeds in and kicks him in the face. It says, "You're mean. Barry Allen isn't mean." He's figured out that this is not really Barry, and whacks him away. And because of this, we get this wonderful interaction where Wallace and Avery are like, "Wait, who are you? What's going on?" And he's like, "Well, I'm Kid Flash." "Well, not really. I'm Impulse again now." But and there's this kind of like conflict back and forth, and the kids are almost ready to fight Bart, and it's Iris who steps in and says, "No. I remember you," because Iris, of course, is remembered everything basically during this run. and he's like, he calls her grandma, and Avery and Wallace are just kind of like, what? Avery's like, I really hate time travel. I'm never doing it. This is terrible. I don't want no part of this. Uh, all this stuff is really good. It's kind of the sort of stuff you wanted when you were dreaming of the Flash characters coming back and stuff being reinstated. He's finally kind of giving it to us. It's a shame that we have to do this without Wally. In fact, when someone brings up Wally, they have to kind of mention that, you know, Bart doesn't know what's happened to Wally and continuity recently, and it's kind of awkward. So it's a shame that we have to deal with that. But the end of the book, and again, why I suspect Matt loves this, is that Barry Thawne is running towards everyone and is basically like, well, you know what? You're all a bunch of losers and you're not worthy of being my Flash family. And, you know, he's getting ready to go in for the kill. And as much as obviously Bart, Wallace, and Avery are there, you kind of, obviously, this is Thawne. He's evil. He's dangerous. He's going to take them on. And then you just hear off panel, it says, son, I mean this with all due respect. And even before you turn to the final page, you know who it is. You know who it is. Jay speeds in, full page spread. Jay stands in the front of everyone else, saying, get the hell away from those kids. So it's full on Flash family, all this, well, not all, but the major speedsters that were lost in Flashpoint and times around then, all back together, kind of taking on this demented version of Barry, which is actually Thawne. Is this kind of what you were dreaming of, like in the early days of the run when there was teases, you know, the J helmet,
the like that up to issue 50 point where we had the Bart introduction.
Yeah, that's just kind of what you were hoping for. And if it just went to this arc, like within an arc, maybe one arc and then this afterwards and ended the run, those 2 years of complaining would have all just been erased and it'd have been fine. But it's hard.
I would have read this.
It's hard not to pop for this issue though, because it does mostly really work and the art's really good. At the final page, like I love the stuff with Bart and Iris. It was really good. It was kind of like their hug was very reminiscent of the Barry and Wally hug in a lot of ways. And then Jay like sort of zooming in here at the end because you know, as much as we've got 3 speedsters with Iris right now, they're all kids. So having like old man Jay swoop in here at the end is kind of wonderful. And I don't know if they're going to address exactly what the context with him is right now. We suspect the JSA is coming back in some capacity soon. So is this Jay from after that happening? Is this Jay from another timeline? Well, we don't know right now. It's a weird place to be in. Maybe they'll address some of this, maybe they won't. At this point, I'm not even going to get my hopes up. I just the moment itself works really well. It's hard not to pop. But actually, I did like the early stuff as well. I think like having this kind of like cheesy version of Barry, it's almost kind of like, obviously it's not going to be dragged out as long, but if you remember when like Doc Ock became Spider-Man by taking over his body, this is kind of like the Flash version of that, but it's so ingrained into the character that Thawne's always wanted to be Barry. He's always had this kind of obsession with him. So it actually plays really well when he's like zooming around at the start with this big cheesy grin, being like, ah, yes, I'm the Flash, everyone worship me. Like, it really comes off, and I think it's really well done. So, one of the best issues of Flash that we've had in quite some time. There is still a layer of apprehension because of what the book's been for a long time. So
it's not earned that trust back yet.
So there is a layer of like, how are you going to screw this up? Like, how are you going to screw this up in the next couple of issues? There is kind of that worry there, but hopefully that doesn't happen. But so it's not. So you can't just give yourself over to it completely because of that. But there's nothing much to fault in this issue on its own. It's kind of the crowd pleaser that we wanted from this book, and is, you know, yes, maybe it's like 25 to 30 issues too late in some ways, but hey, you know what? Better late than never. And that oddly fits Barry Allen to a T, bizarrely.
It does. So what did Matt actually say, rather than you just assuming what he liked?
Yes, I was making some assumptions there. So here we go, Flash. I'm glad I came back. This is the Williamson that I'm in for. This is about as Flash as a Flash book can get. The Thawne possession is still weird, as the timey-wimey stuff with all the villains. I love how Bart figures out that Barry isn't mean, and how Williamson referenced Bart's time as Flash. Yeah, Thawne at one point kind of says, what's going to happen? Is Wally going to be Flash again? Well, we definitely don't want you to become Flash again, Bart. Like, there's there's references to continuity. I think Max Merky also references like a time with Wally as well when he's talking to Barry. And Matt also notes that Bart's time as Flash is underrated. Read if people want to track down Flash, the fastest man alive. Collins inside the Speed Force section provided a nice compliment for Sandoval. Oh yeah, I guess the art did change. I didn't even mention that. I only had one artist listed on Comixology, but now I'm thinking about it. The art did look different whenever it cut to Barry. So it's separated well. Yeah. Iris reconnecting with Bart hit me in the feels. It's nice to see the Flash family grow. So to see Wallace and Avery with Bart feels right. And then that last panel, oh man, so good. Jay Garrick calling Barry Dawn son, top 10 moment of 2020 question mark.
I mean, to be fair, pretty short list this year.
I mean, it is a good moment. Like those last 2 pages are perfect. Those last 2 pages are perfect, as perfect can get in a Flash book. Matt gave it a 9 out of 10. I'm debating my own score. I don't know if I'm ready to go straight to it. I think I want to go 8.5, and my reasoning being is that one, there's that layer of apprehension, right, which I can't really necessarily give to this issue as fault, admittedly, but also the middle does kind of slow down a little bit. When Thawne Flash is like arguing with the villains that he's plucked out of time, he goes back to the base with them. Yeah, that stuff's just kind of whatever. So it does kind of like maybe sag a little in the middle because of that. But the opening is good, and then everything at the end. Bart realizing that it's not really Barry and showing up to save the day. Jay showing up. All that's wonderful. So 8.5 for me.